Well, we're back again.
Let's make a difference.
Yeah, let's make a difference in our lives at least. So today we've decided to do a champagne tasting. So I know that normally we do a champagne tasting in December, and we do a champagne masterclass, and we will be doing one again this year, COVID allowing. Pardon me. But we're going to look at a range of champagnes that I was given to try because I wasn't 100% certain about it. I thought we'd do them as a tasting and see what we think of them there on camera. You know, that way we can't hide from any of the responses that we give. So just quickly, I'll introduce you. So normally this is the novice, the knowledgeable one, and the know-it-all. This time we've got essentially the novice over here, and introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Tom.
Tom.
Yep.
And this is Pat. He's usually the novice, but we're going to put him down as the knowledgeable one today because the knowledgeable one...
Oh, I think we're going to put myself down to less knowledgeable.
Oh, less knowledgeable.
Especially on sparkling.
Okay, so we've got the novice, the uninitiated, and the know-it-all over here. So essentially what we're doing is we're looking at champagne. Now, what do you think classifies as champagne?
I know there's 7 varietals that come from...
Just what is champagne? If I say
sparkling,
the country,
sparkling wine that comes from the Champagne region.
That's correct. That is the exact answer you need to give, because if you say it's a wine from Champagne, that's not true because there are some still whites that come out of Champagne.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Well, they still make Chardonnays and
they have Chardonnays, Pinot Noir, Pinot Meunier,
yeah.
And then there's actually 4 other grape varietals as well that they grow in that area. You won't generally see them unless you're in France itself, but you can get still whites and still reds coming out of there. Still red being generally Pinot. So it is a sparkling wine. Now, what defines a sparkling wine?
Carbonation, yeah.
Yeah, so bubbles. Essentially.
Yeah.
It's probably the simplest answer to do with that.
I do like the history story with sparkling though of the English. What do they call it? The Negociants, the houses, bringing the wines across from France to England, storing them, and then the bumpy ride from the boats getting to England, shaking the bottles up.
Make it bubbly.
Yeah, and then France not actually having any idea of what they were creating at the time.
It's sort of that. The actual story is really cool. So what they did is they made a wine in Champagne. At the time, Burgundy was the most renowned wine region. Burgundy and Bordeaux were the 2 most renowned wine regions in France.
Yeah.
And so, therefore, Bordeaux is like right on the coast. It's a major port city, and all the wines were going from there, basically to the UK for the most part, for reds, and that's where you get your clarets, and obviously your big bold reds from. Burgundy was lighter reds. Chardonnay-based or Aligoté-based whites, and they were generally shipped to Paris, and from Paris it was taken as the port of Paris out up to the UK from there. So what actually happened was they would make white wine, they would put it usually in a bottle, not a champagne bottle, but a standard bottle, like a standard Burgundy bottle. And then they would ship it out. Now they would leave their whites on lees quite a lot, or yeast. And during the shipment home on yeast, so when it goes to fermentation, you're fermenting grape juice essentially with yeast, and that creates alcohol.
Yeah, of course.
So that's a primary fermentation method.
Yeah.
And what actually produces is ethanol and CO2. And in still whites, the CO2 basically gets racked off and blown off.
Yeah.
So what they do is they put that into the bottle, and there'd sometimes be a little bit of yeast lees in there, and they'd cap it and send it off. Yeah. And in the travel from Champagne across to Paris, and from Paris all the way up to the UK, the actual shipments themselves would secondary ferment. So the yeast would actually come back in and begin to ferment the wine again. Yeah. And it's actually called an ancestral method. And it's still used today in some wines. You leave it on, you bottle it, and it gets what's called bottle conditioned, and it begins to ferment there. Yeah. Okay. And that secondary fermentation is what gave it the bubbles. So it would turn up in generally Plymouth and around Dover, and then they'd ship it from there north. So all these UK houses, like mercantile houses and the royal family and stuff, would get this wine, they'd crack it, and it would go
Everywhere, yeah.
and they go, okay, and they'd pour it, and they'd, oh, this is really lovely, it's zesty, it was actually quite high amounts of sugar because it wasn't fully fermented, which is why it began to ferment in the bottle. There's still a lot of sugar there to ferment.
It's like chucking sugar in the bottle. Bubble. Yeah.
And they'd drink it and they'd be like, oh, this is fantastic.
And did that appeal to the English market?
Oh,
like the excess sugar?
Massively.
Massively
Massively appealed.
Because they don't have a high sugar kind of dietary intake.
Yeah.
But
Not at that time.
Yeah.
Now they do.
It's changed.
Yeah. When you deep fry a Mars bar, generally you sugar is pretty much to it. So what actually happened was, it was presented, like this phenomenon was presented to the Royal College of Surgeons by a guy, Merrick, who talked about secondary fermentation in the bottle. And he was talking about it in the version of an ancestral method. So he did that in 1840 or 1830 or 1820, somewhere around there.
Right.
And
almost 100 years ago.
yeah, and actually 200 years ago now.
Sorry,
Yeah.
Pardon me, yeah.
So and then of course the negotiants, which are the guys who buy the mercantile houses, went down to Champagne and went, "Hi, we really like that fizzy wine you make. Can you tell us how you make it?" And literally the winemaker was going, "What?"
Yeah, it's
Wasn't it actually Dom Perignon?
It was an
who
accident.
who figured out.
We'll get to Dom Perignon in a second, but he was just like, "What are you talking about?" They had to ship a bottle of wine back.
Oh, really?
So they didn't believe them. They're like, "What are you talking about? No, it's all still," and it goes
Ship
out.
it back.
And they said, "We'll ship it back." So they shipped one carton or one case or whatever it was back. And they poured it and they went, "What have you done to our..." They literally said, "What have you done to our wine?"
Yeah.
Like, this is not what we make. This is what we made. And they put in a fresh bottle and pour it.
No way.
And it's like, I don't understand.
Same flavored is less fun.
Yeah, and it was just like, this is kind of weird. At this point, most wineries held in the Champagne region, and actually all in France generally, were actually going owned by the church essentially. So this is before the revolution, before that. It was owned by the church, and so therefore they were looking at it, and it was actually, now this is where it gets a little bit of, we're not sure, but a guy called Dom Perignon is the guy that supposedly founded the method traditionnel, which is how you make champagne today. And he actually, what I probably think happened, and this is just conjecture, he probably went, okay, worked out, like Merrick, these are very educated men, despite the fact we're talking.
Chemical reaction.
He worked out that there was a secondary fermentation that occurred. And he also then went, how can we do this to make the wine the way the English want to buy it? Because they were the biggest economy at the time. So he's just gone, rightio. And one of the biggest problems that they did have was actually, there were three major problems. One, bottles exploded.
Yeah.
That's why champagne was known.
Was
known as the devil's drink. It's because you'd put it in bottle, you'd lay it down, and then you go
explode, and then think the devil's done it.
Secondary fermentation.
Yeah.
So they actually had to wait until the English produced top quality glass or glass on glass.
Yeah.
As in
that they had proper glass blowing.
Yeah,
kind of
proper
techniques.
glass blowing technique, and that is what started
That's
being
incredible.
able to use that for sparkling. The other thing that happened is, where's the other weak point in a bottle?
Well, the cork.
Yeah. So he's the one that developed the cage. The cage that wraps around the top.
It's almost like
so we all knew about
Faraday.
corks, and the corks did well, but then the cage holding it on the top.
Yeah.
And then finally,
Is that where the lip on the bottle kind of came from? Is that a thing, or?
it is. That's where the lip, the idea of the lip came from. To hold the cage on.
Yeah.
And finally, the third big point for it was, you don't want a cloudy wine, which was what was happening because of the least yeast were in there.
Unless
So you
you're
need,
right
so you need to clarify it.
Yeah.
And how do you clarify something that is essentially needs a secondary fermentation? So what they ended up doing was, it's really cold cage. They would actually get iced water or icy water, and make sure that the bottle, I don't want to mess it up, but the bottle, they'd make all the yeast lees run into the neck. They'd put it in the water to freeze the lees.
Yeah.
Then they would
So it'd float.
uncap it, and it would take the plug, and the pressure would pop it out. And that's how they clarified the wine.
That's really clever.
Yeah.
That's really clever.
And so all of these things that I've just stated were attributed to Dom Perignon. and that's why he became the father of champagne. There are other stories about him. Some are complete balderdash, but that's pretty much the basis that we're talking about when it comes to the formulation and how champagne kind of came to be.
Yeah.
Now, don't forget, champagne struggled really, really badly in the world of wine because it wanted to make beautiful still wines like Burgundy. No, we're starting with this one.
Alright.
Beautiful still wines like Burgundy did. But they're too cold. They are so far north. They're actually right on the cusp of where you can get quality grapes from. You're looking between 30 and 50 degrees northern latitude, between 30 degrees north and 50 degrees north. And they are literally sitting at about 42 degrees north. Any further north than that, you just won't be able to ripen grapes.
Yes. Southwise, that'd be further south than Central.
It's actually,
Chicago.
So if you flipped it
It's
around,
about the same as Burgundy.
yeah, if you flipped it around 42 degrees, knowing that Barossa is 32 degrees.
It's like the bottom of the south.
It's like, yeah, the bottom of the south. It's down Queenstown,
Bottom of
basically.
Tasmania.
Yeah, 42 degrees is good vodka.
Yeah.
Yeah, my
So there's a massive history around champagne. Now we can go into a lot of history if you want, or we can just have a quick chat about this house, because this is a really funky thing. So, all right. By the way, when opening champagne bottles, always leave your hand on top.
Point at where you don't like.
Point something like. Generally, when opening champagne bottle, if you're opening on a table, I'll suggest you open it on a table. Always leave your hand on top. When you take the cage off, now when you do that, hand over the top, and you can I pull it off, and rotate the bottle from the bottom, and that should be what you get, not the massive pop. If you have the massive pop
everywhere, and
you are going to have someone wearing a cork in the eye. And I have shot 3 people in my history.
I was going to say, this explains why I'm not allowed back to a few of my friends' houses. I think I'm doing it right, but wrongo.
But yeah, I have shot 3 people with corks in my history.
Yeah.
2 of them were intentional, 1 wasn't.
Well, good aim, I guess.
It was great aim, I liked it. I've actually been questioned about other things called sabering. Have you ever heard sabering?
No, let's see.
Alright, it's another way to open a bottle of champagne.
As soon as you think about it.
Yeah.
Yep. And
Is that
if you ever want to see the funniest videos, go onto YouTube and see sabering fails.
sabering gone wrong.
There is one that is horrific, and several that are very funny. The one that is horrific though is actually a girl who won champagne. You had to taste all these champagnes and identify them in regions, and she did so well. And they gave her like this massive Jeroboam of champagne to sabre. And she's a small girl, so she's got this entire weight here, and she's got a sabre. And I've seen people do it with spoons, by the way. They can sabre with a spoon. Because all you're doing is you're hitting the cap.
What's the concept here?
So the concept is you run it across there, you hit underneath that, and that weak point of glass will pop out.
So you are actually shattering
You are
the
actually
glass.
taking-
I wasn't certain whether you were hitting the cork or
No,
the actual bottle.
definitely not the cork.
Yeah,
You're hitting under here and actually taking the weak
Taking the
point
neck
under there off.
that makes sense.
And you can do it with a spoon. Unfortunately, she was weighed down with this thing,
Yep. So she
and the sabre, and she's just done this and pops the finger straight off.
Oh no.
Wait, did it hit herself?
No, this finger.
Surely they wouldn't give you a sharp saber or
Yeah,
something
absolutely.
like that. Oh my, that seems like negligence on their part.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure OH&S is not going to let you say
Yeah.
that.
It looks baller, bud.
Now, I will just say, that, we better talk about the wine a bit.
Yeah,
So, champagne from
smell
Christian
it from here.
Peligri. So, Christian and his wife Sylvie actually both winemaking families. This is their 2nd generation, with the 3rd generation actually going into wine as well, which is really good. Their daughter Marion is now working in Australia, working with her husband's wines, Andrew Peace.
Oh,
So, yep, she works with Andrew Peace Wines, which is where we were given these wines to try from. Now, the interesting part for this is these are located in the Côte d'Ivoire wine growing region in Colombey. So, it's part of the Marne department. So they break like areas of wine into different departments because they're all governmentally controlled. And this is in the Orbe department, which is a really up-and-coming new area. So, and it's in the Côte d'Ivoire, which is part of Orbe. There's a river Orbe.
I was going to just about ask this.
Yeah. And in fact, it's probably half an hour closer to Chablis. Like it's 2 hours south of Reims, but it's like an hour and a half away from Chablis, and it doesn't have the same soil as they do in Champagne.
Right.
Champagne is
Explains.
is used to be Champagne generally was underwater,
Champagne to be fairly
very limestone.
Okay, right, yeah.
Very limestone
Yeah.
soils. And then as you go further south, you actually get what's called Kimmeringian and Portlandian soils. It's kind of like where limestone meets clay. So
Okay.
clay is really, really good for keeping water and does allow a little bit more fruit, make it a bit more fruit-driven style wine. Kimmeringian soils actually have little limestone animals, little spiral shell things.
Okay.
Yes, and like fossils. And those limestone Kimmeringian soils are highly renowned for particularly Champagne,
Right.
for Chardonnay, which Champagne is made from as well. So, it's pretty cool. So I'll just go back to the house though. They took over in 1980. They built the butter factory in the village and transformed that building into a really modernised champagne cellar. They have 12 hectares and sell 73,000 bottles, mainly on the French market and from the cellar door. They only grow 3 grape varietals: Chardonnay, Pinot, Pinot Noir, and Pinot Meunier. And that's the classic blend for Champagne, those 3 grapes.
Right.
So the
Plus,
coat,
but there's 7 all up, isn't
there
there?
are 7 all up that you can add in. There are very few houses that don't just put in those 3 grapes, but you can. There's actually the opportunity for the other.
And
4.
I suppose that would be the really high market.
Usually,
If you're just using the 3 original grapes.
yeah, it depends on what you're trying to make though. Like, if you've got a house style that contains another grape varietal, you can do that. But you generally want to have the people buying. If they go, this is a Champagne, you want to get that sort of flavour to it. But they might want to show their house style in there as well.
Yeah.
And basically you've got three different ways of champagne. You've got house champagnes, which are negotiate champagnes. They buy in fruit from all these things. You've got growers champagne, which are people who grow the grapes can actually get it made for them or by the houses generally. And then you have recollets, which they have a bit of both. Okay.
Right.
So if you look at the bottles, it generally gives you what it is on the label.
That is delicious, by the way. Just want to mention that.
Yeah, well,
It's almost like a palate cleanser of.
This is his straight out Brut traditional. So Brut meaning less than 9 grams of residual sugar in there. Actually, it's less than 3 grams. No, less than 9 grams. Less than 9 grams of residual sugar in there. 12% alcohol.
See.
But it is going to be probably, because it's in the Orb region, I'm guessing it's going to be more Chardonnay based.
There's
definitely got
there's more like it's thicker. It's more viscous. It's got a bit more meat.
Yeah, and the acidity is definitely green apple-y.
Yeah.
So you look at Chardonnay.
That's that kind of like Chardonnay, kind of buttery, like
Yeah.
mellow.
Well,
Kind
it
of,
explained when you said it was close to Chablis. Like even from your first smell, it's just like
It's just almost like a sparkling.
I get a lot of like toasted like nuts and honey
Mhm.
like on the nose, like toasted bread especially, like which is what you're probably looking for in champagne.
Yeah, so one of the big things that Champagne has in the method of production, what you do is you make a still wine.
Yeah.
It's very highly acidic, like it's a high acid still wine, and you can make that using oak or without oak. So I would say, and this is just a complete guess, I'm not getting any real nose of vanillins or sort of that cedary nature.
So no oak.
Like. I'd say if there is oak, it would be very old oak, just
Or-
sitting there.
Or it'd be like a short time on oak or.
No, not short time. It'd be stainless steel.
Oh,
And
that,
then
yeah.
maybe some old oak.
Or
if they're-
staves, maybe?
No, they won't use staves. It's quite expensive. Staves are actually more expensive than you think. Anyway, so
I mean, they're all
Chardonnay based. Probably for me, it's probably dominant Chardonnay. And that's that green apple acid. But then it sits on lees. Now, what's happening with we talked about the primary fermentation. Then it goes into bottle. They add a little bit of yeast and sugar in there to restart that secondary
Do
fermentation.
they re-add the yeast?
Yep.
Is that, yeah, okay.
They re-add that in there.
I wasn't certain whether that was the residual yeast that they just re-sugared.
No, so they put additional yeast in there, and they put a little touch of sugar in there as well, generally.
Okay. Yeah.
And just to reinvigorate the wine, so therefore it does bottle condition, and that undergoes a secondary fermentation in the bottle, producing the acidity, the carbonation.
And they've corked it at this point.
Yeah, and it's usually got actually a crown seal on it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so they use a crown seal it now because it's far more effective than quite expensive, because you have to open that anyway.
Yeah,
to get rid of, to clarify it later.
Yeah.
So what they'll do is they'll do that, and in the bottle, when it's going to go to second condition, they what's called riddle it, which is they'll have the bottle sitting like this, and they'll turn it, and that actually means lees just run down at the front. The length of time that it's in the bottle on lees actually determines the bready characters that you'll taste in there. So therefore, on 12 months on lees, you're going to have very little bready notes or brioche notes or toasty notes. 18 months to 24 months on lees, you'll get a fair bit. And then after that, it's pretty much an extended lees period of 36 months.
Right.
And above. We've had wines up to 7 years on lees.
Wow.
So it would be like eating like burnt bread.
And it was actually toasty, honey notes, brioche, like a sweet buns.
Like a really old Semillon.
Yeah, basically getting to that level, not quite that
like
intensity.
Toast or
but they actually, it's all about that bready mid palate, which is when you taste this, I'm getting actually quite a bit of that toasted honey in there, which means I reckon it's probably been 24 months at least on lees.
Yeah, I can definitely. It's pretty much, to me, it's just like breakfast, like a honey on toast.
Yep. And what actually happens is, to get that, the dead yeasts in there, because they've undergone selective fermentation, they die. And as they break down, they what's called autolysize. And that means it breaks into amino acids, essential amino acids, which goes back into the wine.
Alright.
So it's a very chemically altered wine, essentially. That being said, though, I find, as a champagne drinker myself, and what I've seen in champagnes over the years, this one is really, really good for sort of that entry level sort of people looking at it to have something, because it's got quite a bit of fruit. It's quite Chardonnay-y,
Dead right.
like Chablis,
Like
in
the
fact.
green apple.
And green apple acid.
Like a luncheon kind of almost.
Yep. Really lovely.
But not particularly light.
No, it's not. It's quite well-bodied almost.
What's the price point for that one?
I don't want to say it on camera yet, because we are in negotiations to see if it's worth having first, and then there's going to be there's going to be the RRP, and then it's going to be the special price that we're going to get.
Yeah.
So I don't want to just say yet, but if you go online and have a look, I'm sure you'll find it pretty easily.
Affordable?
Yeah, very affordable.
Yeah.
Yeah. So looking at the same sort of pricing as you get for that we do Mumm and Pommery and things like that.
Okay. Yeah.
So not ridiculously expensive.
Yeah.
I'll take that over Mom any day.
Well,
like.
this is much more
Don't like
towards a new world palate. I like Mumm.
Do I have an order here for? Sorry, what was your name again? Bowling Club. Piccolos or whatever. Yeah. Where are you keeping any piccolos?
No, that's on Friday, I believe.
It's apparently on Friday.
Hold on. Alrighty.
Very well.
I've never to find it if there's an order for piccolo somewhere.
Wait, pickle. I know we got Brown Brothers pickle.
No. It's actually she ordered some Sauv Blanc, and I did have it here at the time and gave it to her. So I made the assumption I didn't need to order more, so I'll have to order more this afternoon. Yes. Anyway, that aside. So this I find is a very new world champagne drinker or sparkling drinker wine. Because I usually go for light air and bubbles with that brioche mid palate. So it's quite light, quite
This has got that
dry.
acidity at the front though. Like I actually really like it. It's kind of like it's definitely real intense acid, like green apple and
That's the main note.
There's none of that.
As like a new
savoury mushroom.
umami.
butter.
Yeah.
There's none of that sort of stuff going into it.
I get a bit of butter with
Yeah.
it, but like it's not intense.
Yeah, mostly just because it's so kind of.
I probably
Fun
find it
business.
a little bit. I reckon that the grams of sugar now are probably between 6 and 7, because I am getting a little bit of that slight cloying
Is that
sweetness
a-
to finish.
Is that a lot for the bottle? You mean?
No, not really.
No.
No, you've actually got the levels of it go. It goes brut to brut. You've got ZD, which is zero dosage. Because the sugar actually, the only time sugar comes into this is at the end.
Yes.
So once they've popped out that cork of lees,
Yeah.
then they have what's called the dosage. And the dosage is where you add in a bit more of the wine
Yep.
and some sugar
Wait,
to give it sweetness.
Is in like straight.
I use it like a sugar syrup.
Like
kind of thing.
glucose.
So it's in the thing. So you actually determine, and this is what a lot of house styles are, is they will determine how much sugar they want in their wine. So looking back in the days of when the Brits were drinking it, you're looking at between probably 17, 18, 20 grams of sugar. Nowadays,
that's like sparkling Moscato kind of thing.
no, well, not quite that high, but it's definitely getting up to that point. But as it's been going, we're going drier and drier. But if you might, there's this one major house, I don't want to name them here, but they have 3 different styles of non-vintage that they do. They have a UK style, a US style, and a Russian style.
Alright.
What's the Russian
Which one
style?
is more sugary?
So,
No
UK
sugar,
style,
really strong.
Yeah.
no, actually the UK style is about 5 to 7 grams of residual, no, maybe even less. 5 to 7 or 4 to 6.
So quite dry.
So a drier style.
Yeah.
The US is between 9 and 11 grams, and the Russian is between 15 to 20.
Really? Would not have picked that.
No.
Yeah.
Wouldn't have picked that at all.
No,
Yeah.
because the Russians actually quite like the sugar too. It's just they drink very heavy alcohol.
Yeah.
But I mean, all you can do
And
is
they are
take
quite-
a look at that Hungarian tokaji. You can have a dry one, or you can have generally a sweet one.
And the Russians are quite fun-loving, like upbeat people.
Oh yeah, they are very happy, and I find them to be very joyful.
Yeah.
Sorry, Vladimir.
Would
Yeah.
not.
Please don't hurt me, Putin.
Yeah.
I don't want to go back to the gulag.
I actually
Don't worry, there's a
Anyway.
slap here. He's approving everything.
Yeah, the commissar said it's fine. Anyway, but yeah, I
back on course.
they've actually got those 3, and they actually own those 3 markets. The funny part is though that they will sell those three different types, 3 different markets. They get bought by places like Dubai, and Dubai will, because Dubai is about the 3rd largest wine importer in the world.
Yeah, I've heard this. I've
Yeah.
heard they're
Which,
a major
for a
wine.
dry
Hilarious
country.
For dry
That's
country.
it. Yeah.
But it's all resold
Yeah.
back in.
To the foreigners.
Yeah,
that
to foreigners.
live there, yeah.
And so what actually happens is it's not unusual, and you'll see in Australia as well, is that you'll find a wine, and it'll be imported by a particular company, and you'll go, oh, okay, and I know that wine because I've had it previously, and you'll pour it, and you'll drink it, and you'll go, oh, I don't remember it quite being that sweet, but maybe I just forgot. And
But somehow ended up with the Russian version.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you just got a different. That actually explains
It does
a few
explain-
different drinks that have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you work in the hospitality industry, and particularly in weddings, you'll have discovered that, that's got a slightly different label to the one we had last time.
Yes.
And you'll actually find out that, it's actually a completely different one.
Yeah.
And you got a whole bunch of wedding guests full of
This is
sugar highs. while
This is
being drunk.
answering a
well
few
as
questions
Yeah.
that I've had in the back of my mind for quite a while.
It's like Dylan drunk ruggrass.
Literally, yeah.
It's the reason we just
So-
give our kids record.
This one is that was the Brut Traditional, which I probably reckon, due to the sugar content in it, is probably a little bit up there, going towards that. So there's as I said, there's ZD, there's Brut to Brut, which is 2 grams and less. There's Brut, which is 9 grams and less. There's Extra Dry, which is between 9 and 14 grams, and then it goes to Sec. It goes to Demi-Sec and then on to Sec. So Demi-Sec being 16 to 12, and then Sec being 16 and above.
What's the translation to sec? Just
Actually, Sec translates as dry, which is really weird.
And Brut, I was gonna.
Brut
say
translates as dry. Yeah.
Just dry.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
man, the wine world loves making it fun.
Oh yeah.
What's
Yeah, we haven't not begun to start talking about Italian grapes. Anyway,
What's Blanc de Blanc again?
Blanc de Blanc is made. Well, think about it. What's the word? What's the word Blanc
White
mean?
to white.
White.
Yeah.
Yeah.
White meaning, and de means from,
Okay,
So white from white.
Oh, okay.
Now, what is the white grape involved in making champagne?
Chardonnay.
So therefore, there's no
So,
Pinot Noir,
so
and
it's
there's no Pinot
pure
Meunier.
Chardonnay. Yeah.
So it's purely Chardonnay. It's actually, that is my favourite style of champagne. Is a Blanc de Blanc.
Have a I'm quite partial to the Pol Blanc de Blanc.
Oh yeah, Pol Blanc de Blanc's awesome. So this one is called the Brut Reserve. So I believe this is a step up from the traditional.
It's also a lot drier. We just had a taste.
Oh, good grief! Yeah, the nose is
Yeah.
completely.
The nose is completely different. I
Yeah.
think this one is.
The nose is more traditional champagne.
Mm. And I even detect a little bit of oak in there as well. So I'd say this one must be.
Yeah, it's got a bit of vanilla in there.
Yeah, it's got a bit of oak barrel to it. Not much, but enough there to make it interesting.
Yeah, it is.
And it's probably been on.
So, and that's probably what makes it the reserve.
Yeah, I'm guessing that's probably they put a little bit of oak onto it. They've probably picked better parcels of Chardonnay and Pinot Noir, I'm going to guess, and put that into there as well. Out of the two of them, I'm a bit torn. I like that one because
I reckon that's an easy drinker.
that's an easy drinker one. I
It's a bit
think
different too.
possibly I might struggle a little bit to do the entire bottle myself because it is a little bit sweet. This one here, in comparison, doesn't seem as sweet, but I'm going to actually have to.
This one, I think the bready notes were more overstated. Like you can actually get a lot more of the bready notes in that one.
This
which I
one-
kind of like.
The acidity is a little bit harder, not quite as green apple in the acidity, so probably a lot more Pinot Noir and a lot more Pinot Meunier. And in fact, if you taste it, you'll find that the Chardonnay component is probably a little bit more of the lactic acid, so it's undergone a little bit of mallow maybe. But the Pinot Noir component is probably a lot higher, and you're getting a lot more of those. And you don't want to say red fruits because it's a white wine, but you are picking up red fruits. You're picking up red notes in there.
I get a lot of like white mulberries. Like
I've never had a white mulberry actually. Tell the truth.
they're actually quite like acidic.
Yep.
Like a lot more acidic. Like so, a lot more acidic than the red ones.
Yep.
Not like obviously don't have that red berry taste.
Mhm.
Yeah, if you ever get a chance to have a white mulberry,
Yep.
it reminds me a lot of that.
Oh, okay.
This definitely has more of that traditional.
Yeah, it does taste a lot more
Slight bit of
traditional.
brioche in the mid palate, whereas the first one
It's really
somehow manages to be more full bodied.
Yeah.
this one's really drying at the end though in the finish. Like,
It is. I
yeah.
find the acidity a bit better in this one for me. A bit more balanced, the acidity and the fruit to the flavour from the
Yeah.
wine.
I'd probably go this one just for that drinkability.
Yeah.
See, I'd go
Yeah.
the first one just for drinkability.
'Cause
Like I know I'll
you
probably
might-
have like a
Whereas that
I'd start
one,
having
you might not.
acid
feel like
reflux
that.
after a while,
Oh, okay, yeah.
but
You could almost,
I think I enjoyed that
about
one
half,
better.
and then it'd be
Well,
a little bit
even though I know
sweet.
that one's better.
That
Just
makes
to
sense.
give you guys a note on where this is. So this is a map of the Champagne region. So that's the main area of Champagne, and you might notice that like Côte de Cézanne, Côte de Blanc, the Villa de Marne, Montreuil de Reims. There's Côte de Bar. Look how far away it is. It is closer to Burgundy than it is to Champagne.
So it should have a lot more body. And,
Well, I'm just saying, look at the distance of it,
yeah.
for starters. The second thing is that the vineyard area has grown by about 20%, and it now makes up a quarter of the entire Champagne region.
Really?
Yeah. So, literally, that area there.
Is it production versus like quality kind of thing, or?
Okay, if you are looking for the Grand Crus of Champagne, they're all going to be here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't think there are.
Yeah,
there are no Grand Crus.
You're not
in the Côte de Bar.
paying anything over $200 for
Yeah.
a wine from that region.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Until they do establish themselves in a strong way. But it's not far from the city of Troyes. So here you go, have a look at that. So it's actually really interesting to see that
It's almost like they've hit that perfect storm of production versus environment to actually grow it.
Well, the thing is, if you've ever been to Champagne, it is just literally vineyard or vineyard or vineyard or vineyard.
Right. Okay.
Whereas
yeah.
that region has got interspersed of forests. There's actually quite a whilst it has increased by 20%, there's still quite a lot of forests and area around it,
Right,
which
right.
can bring its own problems. Because if you think about what affects grapes. Lots of forest is great for breaking the wind and to allow protection from storms and things like that, but also encourages birds.
It also sucks a lot of water out of the soil.
Insect life and stuff like
Insect
that.
life is another thing too.
Whole host
So
of problems,
so whilst you get rid of one problem over here, which can be over farming and overproduction, you also pick up some other areas of damage there. Frosts are another big one that forests have a tendency to mitigate as well. And especially as Champagne in itself is a really cool area.
because they almost make their own kind of like local biome as far as temperature and humidity goes.
Yeah. So the orb has been an interesting area, and since I started learning about it back in 2011, 2011 was when I first heard of the orb, and I looked at it, and it was literally kind of the orb's actually part of the Champagne region too, and that was kind of the only thing I didn't know about.
What's the orb?
The orb's the river that runs in, and it's under
okay.
It's under a different department from the rest of Champagne. It's under the Haute Domaine department, which Champagne's under the Champagne department. So it was quite interesting. And you sort of looked at it going, what's so great about it? And they were talking about how the whites from there, the Chardonnay particularly, was getting better and better. But they were concerned a bit about the Pinot Noir and the Pinot Meunier particularly. Concerned about the growth. And that was 2011. Since then, obviously, the area's grown, and there's been a lot more knowledge around it. In fact, I was reading an article today saying it's probably the up-and-coming area of Champagne. Really? Kind of like if you're looking at Burgundy, the classic regions of Burgundy are the Côte de Nuits and the Côte de Beaune, but you kind of forget that there's the Mâconnais and the Chardonnay, which are just awesome regions. And they're really, really up-and-coming, and in fact, they're probably regions I prefer to drink my French Chardonnay out of.
So why specifically that is? Is that just different?
A little bit more southerly for me, and they've usually put a bit more emphasis on the wine making of it, because what actually happens is when you own Premier Cru or vineyards, you're paying a lot of money for grapes. And I mean, I was at €70 a litre.
Like a shed load.
Yeah, and you sit there going, wow. Or you can go down to Givry or Mercure and then go and buy it there, and you're going to be paying like €2 a litre.
Oh, really? That kind of difference?
Well, yeah, you're €2 for the juice, and then going on to make it from there.
Yeah.
So you can buy an excellent Premier Cru from. I should have said Grand Cru for the north, but you can buy an excellent Premier Cru Chardonnay from Givry or Mercure or Rouly for about €30. But when you go to buy something from Montrachet, you're paying about 100.
Right, so price point wise.
So pretty big difference.
Yeah, it's massive.
And then of course when you look at the imports for those, multiply that by 3.
So you got the law of diminishing returns. You're getting almost as good.
Couldn't have said it better.
Price.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, these are some fantastic wines that will last for generations in some cases. But really, when you want to drink something,
dollar for value.
Value for money. Chardonnay, Mâconnais, Poulet Foussé.
Poulet Foussé. Yeah. Well, Steve's got that one that I'm going to have a try of tonight.
It's lovely.
Yeah.
So I said, probably at that much more towards New World wine drinkers. So if someone came in and said, I'm looking for a bottle of champagne.
Yeah, see, I've got a sweet tooth, so I know I'd
go for that one. This one is a bit more.
This one.
This one's more traditional. But it's still not a searing acid which you normally get into champagne.
There's that massive it's dry now.
Yep.
Yeah.
So it'd definitely be a good entree,
like immediate strike.
It'd definitely be a good wine because
it's
really drying, really good with entrees.
More traditional ones do. Approaching.
Okay.
It's approaching more traditional.
As a complete novice, I understand what you're saying as far as like total. I thought that was a palate cleanser, but after tasting this second one, it's almost like my world's kind of exploded.
It's there. So champagne. That's the other part is if anyone here that has actually had champagne dinners, where they go, oh yes, we're going to have champagne in every course. A lot of people go, oh, champagne's an aperitif. It's not. It's good for an aperitif. Like you're going to really love to dry, but if you're having a beautiful chicken dish, a blanc de blanc is stunningly good.
Exactly.
If you're having a meat dish, the blanc de noir, which literally means white from black, and the black grapes being Pinot Noir, Pinot Meunier, you're getting some really lovely flavours with that. You can do it. And in fact, when it comes to desserts, you can even have, literally, let's talk about the sweetness scale, there are really sweet champagnes you can have. Moet does an imperial nectar, which is really delightful. Like, it's really lovely. And in fact, I would probably suggest that the reason they released it is because someone actually drank the dosage and went, "That's awesome! Can I just have that?"
It's that sweet. What's the sugar per alcohol content on that one?
Oh, quite high, about 40.
About half, so quadruple. Half sugar to half alcohol.
Yeah, it's pretty full on. It's good. But I said I loved it. I thought it was actually excellent. And in fact, Australia tried to replicate that back in the 2005, 2006. With do you remember there was you might not, it's a bit too young, a thing called O. It said, remember
Yes.
Yellow Glen put out O?
Yes.
And it was, drink this on ice. And it's like, what? Right. So and it was a sweet style that actually got people into it.
I've never tried it.
Yeah, that's what they were trying to do.
Because of the ad.
Yes. Oh. Yeah. That's enjoying that one.
Yeah. No, I just
Okay, I've now found a small problem with my opening of the next one. Oh, here it is. No. When opening champagne, forget this. You've got to find the
tag.
The tag.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, they sometimes make the tag. That one was black and black, so it's easy to find. This one's gold. Okay, does anyone here know what the word milsim means? Because this is the Christian Peligri. This is his prestige. It's actually a milsim. Anyone know what it is? Know what it means? Milsim.
I'm going to search pretty far back in my French. Like the 2 semesters I did at French in boarding school.
Vintage.
Je m'appelle Pat, so no.
I actually like to point out my French speaking. I spoke to a Burgundian winemaker, and I said to him, look, I'm sorry, I'm going to butcher your language. And I was talking to him, trying to use the right terms with the right French accent. Yeah. And in fact, you end up talking like this because it's so much simpler.
You know what? I've done the exact same thing.
You can't help it.
You can't help it.
You're trying your best.
It's like when you go to Italy and you start speaking like this, and you start.
Do you do that thing where you look back at yourself? After like 5 minutes of speaking, you're like, God, I'm an idiot. Like, am I an idiot? Or like...
He turned around. He was lovely, very polite, such a charming gentleman, and he said, your accent is very Parisian. And I'm like, thank you, that's so lovely.
She's nothing to me.
And I'm like, that's awesome. And then I ended up in Paris, and I started doing the same thing, and they looked at me and went, it's very regional, your accent. At that point I said, I'm stuffed on it.
If you go to Serbia, just yell and look really angry, you'll be fine.
Oh, sweet.
I can't
That's just what I don't want to be.
You might
get shot.
Yeah, my friend got locked up at a Serbian jail trying to cross the border into the next country over on motorbikes. Yeah, it was a long couple of days for him.
Yeah. I was going to say.
Not a funny story, but...
I was going to say, I was right up there with
that. It was
story.
because he wasn't the best person.
Actually, this is not a milsim. This is actually just his prestige brut. Normally, a milsim...
Brut to brut, or...?
No, this is... So what it is a prestige brut means that this is the best that he does, the primary one that he does. And normally that would be a milsim or a vintage. Because they only release vintage champagnes in very special years. And in fact, for a champagne to be listed as vintage, it has to pass a whole bunch of CIVC certifications.
What's an example of a special year?
So a year basically where everything went right, the crop yields were good, they weren't low, they weren't high, the actual clarity of the fruit was fantastic, that no major mildew, storms, damage to it.
Yeah.
So they go, that is a classic year, and it's 202, 204, 25, 27, 29, I think it is, 2829.
So it goes into
13. No, it doesn't. You actually have to apply for it. And so the major houses would love to release a vintage every year. We want this every year, but no, they can't because they realise that it's a balance between growers, houses, and the governmental department. So there's 3 arms that actually all talk about this. and
Makes
no
sense.
single house can declare a vintage. So
Oh,
they
so
actually
the government
have.
has to.
It has to be declared a vintage. It has to pass through the
shit.
CIVC, which is again 3 different arms
Wow.
working together.
That's amazing. I had no idea.
Yeah.
And that also
It's very
explains why,
controlled, yeah.
like, that also explains the, and
It's
it's
just lovely.
not to get into nitty gritty, but like the price point on vintage
Yep.
and non-vintage is
It's
you know,
pretty
markedly
massively different.
Yeah, yeah.
I
That
just like
actually
one of
clears
the
things up.
quality of cork as well. Like I've had some like
Dodgy
shonky
cork.
yeah, some shonky corks at work.
Actually, let's have a quick look at
This
this.
is almost like
Yeah.
defined.
Did you say
Define
this was a
nice
brut,
champagne.
by the way?
Yeah, this is
Yeah.
actually for me. This is probably the most champagne.
It's
This
and,
is
uh,
bang on. Like,
Yeah,
this is what champagne should be.
Can you and as a complete amateur, as a complete novice here, I'm taste. I see. I understand what you mean by like almost like a toasted bread kind of
Yep.
taste. Is that just me or?
No,
is-
that's it. That's what's meant to be there.
Yeah.
It's got
Yeah.
that. It's got that savoury mid.
Completely.
Palate.
You were saying it before in the second, and I was sort of like, I think I understand it, but this one completely,
It
completely
smells
taste it.
really
Yeah.
fresh
Mm.
Yeah.
with a bit of savouriness.
Yeah.
It tastes light, yet
Like fluffy.
yet
Yeah.
savoury with a bit of mushroom and toast.
See, I get
And then at the
I
end,
get
the finish-
buttery fresh cooked bread.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then at the end, it's dry enough that it doesn't linger. It's not heavy in your stomach,
Yeah.
and it
This is
literally
exciting.
makes you want to drink a whole
See,
lot.
this is
This is an
Yeah.
exciting glass.
This is the
like,
difference between these for me is that
Yeah.
that one was probably a little bit too sugary and sweet. This one was getting a bit more on point, and this is actually probably the one I'd recommend to be the one to
Yeah.
go. And price
Do you know
points on
what
that are.
price point
Yeah.
like comparative to each
I
other?
think, and I'm pretty sure, the difference between these two is like $5, and that one's about 10.
Oh, that's
So maybe $15
Reasonable
between
as
that.
hell.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
for a proper champagne.
For a real champagne, because I get a lot of customers coming and go, oh, I want a bottle of champagne. Oh, how much looking to spend? Oh, $20.
Yeah.
You're not going to
Yeah.
champagne.
Yeah.
If you look it up to a
You can have
35,
sparkling.
Yeah, you could have two
yourself a-
James Creek Moscatos.
I don't think you quite. And it's not that. It's not people's fault. That's just some people. That's just how they are.
I feel like
People-
I've been in this store before and said, hey, look, I really want to impress a girl, but I've got $20.
Yeah.
For me.
Yeah,
So-
what can you
here's
get
a
rid of?
Grenache.
Yeah.
yeah.
And there are
It's
some
not my
great,
fault.
great
Yeah,
wines.
you can use my photo on your dating website.
Yeah, you can actually. You can
If you're a little skinny.
Give me some time to save some money.
You can get some great sparklings for around $20 to $30, quite
Oh
easily.
yeah, definitely.
But when it goes to champagne, you are literally looking at a fairly exclusive,
$60 buy-in.
at least $60.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Don't kid yourself. If you go to Dan Murphy's, you can probably pick up some for $45 to $40, maybe. I won't deny the veracity of them, but sometimes you do get a bit of a dice roll of how they do come out, and that's not Dan's fault. That's just
how
their.
they travelled across.
Yeah, they've travelled across because they've literally gone from point A to Dubai and then to
Yeah,
across there.
and we spoke about this in terms of the what was it, Russian American and
Yeah.
yeah. The
So
actual
actually, here's something pretty cool. Have a look at the top. So that's the first one. That's like the little boring to tap. Yeah,
do English.
yeah. That's the second one.
Oh.
Yeah, and that's the third one. They got really cool little cage tops.
That's where your $10 goes.
Yeah, basically. Some nice little artwork
Apart
on
from
there.
the wine, mate.
I've never
Of
seen
course.
artwork on a cage top yet,
No.
including on Bella Pops and things like that.
I love the third one. Like,
Yeah, it's really good. That could be a tattoo for you.
oh no, I
He's
gotta
gonna
go.
go on right now.
Yeah, I have to go to that Montreal one soon. Apparently.
Oh, really? Oh,
Yeah, Montreal one again today.
Yeah, that's.
I'm quite happy because I bet on them, but
yeah.
the betting money's just gone.
The betting one's going to straight to tattoo, yeah.
But one thing, like, I'm curious about is how does Australian sparkling,
Hold up to it?
hold up to champagne?
So this is where you really need to look at what is a classic Australian sparkling to what is.
Well, I'm thinking like House of Yarras, like something.
House of Arras?
Yeah, something that's
Probably
really.
the closest you're going to get is House of Arras.
Yeah, that's my favourite of Australian
Yeah.
sparkling.
Delamere does a really good sparkling as well. In fact, the top stuff of that, Bream Creek. If you're looking, I'll be dead set honest here. If you something stupid, if you want the best sparklings that you can get in Australia, yes, a lot of regions do sparkling. A lot of them do sparkling incredibly well. But for me, the one that I find stands up the most and seems to be the best area for sparkling is Tasmania, and particularly the southern areas of Tasmania.
Is it climate based or
climate based? Totally climate based.
Same, like,
But
it'd be the same.
there was, because I heard someone talking about the winemaker from some well-renowned sparkling winemaker went down and worked with. Pretty sure it was the House of Yarras.
Harris.
Yeah. A lady. Can't remember what her name was, but world-renowned winemaker went to work for House of Arras, and since then it's just gone through the roof.
Yeah, it's one. House of Arras is probably one of the few corporate-owned wineries that makes.
Oh, is it a corporate?
Oh, it's absolutely corporate. Yeah, Accolade owns it.
Oh, no.
But they haven't destroyed it, which is really, really lovely. Which happens quite a lot to anything that's owned by large superannuation-driven corporations. They have a tendency to do it.
Why do they? Can you, just as a novice, why do they destroy it?
Absolute bean counters on them. So what actually happens is they'll cut the costs.
Yeah. Okay.
Make it popular.
You've heard of AXA, have you?
No, I haven't actually. Sorry.
AXA, massive superannuation hedge fund corporation. Yeah.
Yes, I have.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So they when I was overseas in France, they actually did a purchase of, and it's the only purchase I've heard of a Grand Cru plot of Burgundian vineyards, and they bought a very small parcel in Elysée-Corton for something like 300 million euros.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a big parcel at all. But that's the only sale that I've heard of Burgundian Grand Cru vineyards in the last 15 years.
Right. So it's almost
so
like
the money they had, it's an investment for them. And what actually happens is stop thinking about wine from the producer, the craftsman type thing, and then start looking at it from an investment point of view.
Yeah.
And you might discover pretty quickly it's not a great investment.
No,
It's like buying that elusive Grange vintage to hang on to for 20 years and then on sell.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're not going to do that.
I want to open it now and
Yeah.
drink it.
There are some.
Yeah.
The world of wine has always had investment to it, and investment's been a really, really big part of the growth of wine.
See, this
But
is changing my
when
kind of
you
scope.
when you look at it, you go. So let's just take a small producer. They've got 40 acres. They produce maybe 20 pallets of wine. They're going, yeah, this is great. We're doing such a great deal. And then all of a sudden, an investment comes to it. Goes, hey, look, how about we really like your wine. You're doing really well. You're growing in the market. We'd like to help you out by investing in your company. We'll invest to give you some money for it. And they go, yeah, that's fine. And then they invest into it. And as soon as they get the investments, there's a chance that there are corporate ways to take over wineries and stuff.
Yeah, I can see that. They might even almost a splinter cell.
Yeah, they might even just buy you out. They might go, yeah, this is great. We want you to keep doing what you're doing, but we want to buy it. And I mean, as someone who's flogging themselves year in, year out, you suddenly get given
that, to be honest,
like, let's say $10 million. You go, oh, 10 million.
Correct.
That's woo, yeah. And
Does it get to a point where it's hard and you make it like,
And
let's
then
make a liter of grape juice.
Well, the market's doing this. How come you're not making your wine?
Yeah, so we need you now to up.
Make them
that should be a red flag.
Yeah, so what they do is they'll invest.
They do that with brews as well.
Yeah, they do. But they'll invest into you. You go, yep, this is great. I've got money. My family's looked after. I'm working still for you guys. I'm making great wine. And then usually about 2 years, 18 months to 2 years, they come to you and go, look, we need you to up your production because your wine's doing great, but not everyone can get it. And you go, I've only got 40 acres. Well, look, how about we buy in more juice for you? We'll buy more free. Sure. But I don't have enough production facilities. Well, let's move the production facility from your small production. We might do a few of the lines there, but we'll do all the major lines that we're selling, buying in. We're going to do it over in our big production facility over here. And you go, okay, and then you're trying to manage. Well, I can't manage both areas at once. Don't worry, we'll get one of our assistant winemakers to do that for you, and he can do that.
You're already 3/4 of the way out.
Yeah, okay, and very shortly your name is on a brand that has been sold to someone else. They're making mass production of it, and it goes into a litre bottle at $7.50. and you see your winery just die.
By
the way, you're out of the business.
Yeah, you got paid.
You were out.
You got paid.
They gave you that check.
American Hardy's the stamp.
Yes, exactly. So literally, that's what happens.
Another glass.
So that's what actually happens, and that's what happens in the world of wine when big investment companies come in. And there's very few big investment companies who've done. Accolade seems to have stopped doing that recently and started actually pushing
Quality.
Quality in some areas, because they actually have just bought some pretty extensively wonderful wineries, and I'm just terrified that they're going to do what they did to Evans and Tate.
Who have they done recently?
They bought in Estonia. Estonia, St. Helens, which was...
Oh, St. Helens.
Is that why St. Helens went...
Yeah.
Because I used to... The Faith Shiraz was my go-to, 15 years ago.
Yeah, let's not get on that on camera because we'll get sued.
Sorry.
So, Estonia and...
Don't sue us, Accolade.
Yeah, please don't sue us.
Don't buy two hands.
What's it called?
What did you do?
2 hands? I love 2 hands.
No, I'm saying don't buy 2 hands.
Oh yeah, please don't buy 2 hands. Yeah,
I love
2
hands.
2 hands have actually got pretty savvy guys that are owners, and I don't think they'll ever sell.
Okay.
Or if they do sell, they'll sell and then they'll probably remove their name pretty quickly off.
As long as they don't buy soul growers, leave soul growers alone.
Yeah, soul growers, leave them alone too, please. I really like soul growers.
Yeah.
Please leave
Please
leave Sean alone.
Sony.
Yeah. We've got a certain amount of people that we really like.
Rock and Shack.
At the end of the day, though, we better get back on the topic. So
we digress.
We're as it is, we're already on the verge of a lawsuit. I don't actually have lawyers. So out of this,
I got 3
wines.
Me and a mustache.
Let's just go for which one is probably the most New World. I reckon that one because it's probably a little bit higher in the sugar content. Which one's probably a little bit more savvy with more Pinot content? That one there. One I think I'd probably any champagne lover I would recommend thoroughly that one.
See, I reckon it's a perfect kind of you don't like champagne, but you want sparkling.
Yeah.
You like champagne, but you don't want to pay top dollar.
Yeah.
You like champagne, and you want a cheaper version of a $200 bottle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That'd be good.
That's a good summary.
So so that's Christian Peligri. Actually, don't mind. We've been talking about. I've been talking to the guys who sold me Andrew Peace wines. Phil, he brought them up to me to show me. I've been quite impressed. At the end of the day, probably I'd happily range that one and that one. That one we'll have to look into, and I'll get other. We're going to have a tasting with some more people later. And
I reckon I could sell that one.
Yeah. It might be the house pour for the Finbars. Anyway,
well, unless it's cheaper than
that's a pretty damn good pub.
Yeah, I'm sorry, we'll be struggling to try and get that one under price.
How does it go with an Aperol Spritz?
Oh, that would be outstanding, actually.
Something we have to try off camera.
Yeah, I think we'll have to try that definitely. Anyway, thank you all for turning up today and having a watch. So that's been Tom, Pat, myself, Andrew, and Odge over here. Odge hiding in the corner there. He's just been hiding off camera. He refused to come on, but his bald head is there now. So thank you all for coming along and listening in. So pretty well, pretty like a savvy. Cheers.
Thank you for having me.
There we go.
Cheers.
Oh, do you want to
hit the button?
Purely because I've taken the afternoon off work.
There you go.